And welcome back to Behind the Bias, a history of liberal media. Now, the mainstream media holds conservatives to different standards than their liberal colleagues. But what are these standards, and how does this hypocrisy affect American politics?
There is so much left-wing bias in the mainstream media that if you give them a sword, they will use it, and they will relish using it. If a Democrat gives them a sword, more often than not, they will lay it down.
As a result of their bias, the liberal media imposes outrageous double standards on the GOP. From racial issues to matters of intellect, Republicans are routinely held to a much higher standard than their Democratic counterparts.
They are always willing to forgive Democrats and liberals or ignore the sins of Democrats and liberals, but will never forgive conservatives for what they say.
Now, this double standard is clearly evident when it comes to racial issues. Senate Minority Leader Trent Lott was forced to resign his leadership position back in 2002 when at a birthday party for former Senator Strom Thurmond, he said,
"When Strom Thurmond ran for president, we voted for him. We're proud of it."
That was seen as a tacit endorsement of the kind of segregation that Thurmond stood for at the time. And for many people, those kinds of gaffes or statements or slips of the tongue, those are seen as revealing something. It fits very easily into a narrative that conservative politics in America rose on the back of racial prejudice.
But for liberals, it's a different story. The media was silent when then-Senator Joe Biden referred to Barack Obama as the first mainstream African-American candidate who is articulate and bright and clean, or told an Indian-American supporter this:
"You cannot go to a 7-Eleven or a Dunkin' Donuts unless you have a slight Indian accent." I'm not joking.
When liberals make verbal slips of those kinds, and we have ones from Joe Biden and many other political figures, it doesn't fit a narrative of any particular kind. Therefore, the story is usually reported, but it's not fit into a larger narrative, and it isn't remembered 5 or 10 years later.
Anybody with any smarts who's paying attention says, you know what, this process lacks integrity. It's not equal. It's not balanced. You're not really concerned about race and about intimidation and offense. What you're concerned with is scoring political points.
The roots of this hypocrisy go all the way back to the Civil Rights Movement and the Democratic Party's shameful past.
The Democratic Party has a lot to apologize for when it comes to race. Robert Byrd, when he was alive, had a lot to apologize with regards to race. Al Gore Sr., who opposed the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Sam Ervin, the hero of Watergate. These were all deep-dyed segregationists. And so if you dig very deep into Democratic dirt, you'll be turning over just a treasure chest of old racist comments and attitudes.
And the liberal media has allowed the Democrats to bury this history.
Along about the time that the media went left, they began to assist the Democratic Party in the airbrushing of their racist past out of the headlines. Someone had to be the bad guy in the Civil Rights War. Someone had to take the fall for having had a segregationist South. And with a less than brilliant media, they don't understand the history of the Civil Rights Act.
But perhaps no media double standard is as outrageous as the one surrounding intelligence and stupidity. Dan Quayle was nearly laughed out of office when he misspelled the word potato at a Trenton middle school.
Add one little bit on the end. Potato. You're right, phonetically. There you go. All right.
And vice presidential nominee and Fox News contributor Sarah Palin was mocked relentlessly after her interview with CBS News anchor Katie Couric.
What newspapers and magazines did you regularly read before you were tapped for this?
All of them, any of them.
The default position for the liberal media vis-a-vis conservatives is that conservatives are dumb. So that when a Dan Quayle makes a faux pas, they jump on it because, aha, see, I told you he was dumb. When a liberal makes the same kind of faux pas, the media's reaction is completely the opposite. They see these people as uber enlightened, and therefore it was just a faux pas, and therefore it doesn't merit coverage, and so they ignore it.
And ignore it they have, from Al Gore's infamous inquiry at Monticello.
Who are these people? Well, this is George Washington on the extreme right and Benjamin Franklin on the left.
To the president and vice president's greatest hits.
Chuck Graham, state senator's here. Chuck, stand up, Chuck. Let him see you. Oh, God love you. What am I talking about?
I've now been in 57 states. I think one left to go.
When the stock market crashed, Franklin Roosevelt got on television and didn't just talk about the princes of greed. He said, look, here's what happened.
Unfortunately for Biden, FDR was not the president when the stock market crashed. Herbert Hoover was. And television, well, that had not yet been invented.
Someone like Barack Obama can make a variety of factual slips about running his campaign in 57 states or other things without anyone impugning his intelligence. Those are treated as what they are. They're slips of the tongue. But they're not fitted into a narrative that somehow Barack Obama is unintelligent.
With the Democrats, it's a smile, it's a nod, and let's move on. And everybody knows that Joe Biden's the smartest guy who ever came out of Delaware.
Now, the double standards imposed by the media shape the news, and as Americans turn on the television day after day, they also shape the nation's political narrative.
The assumption is Republicans don't know what they're talking about, don't understand because they haven't taken the time to study the issue. Democrats know so much about this issue, are so well schooled, are so erudite, and have the experience to deal with this issue, but most people just can't keep up with them.
Once they've defined someone as either outside the mainstream, a lunatic, or stupid, the circuit breaker throws, the minute you see them on television, the ability to persuade is over, and that's really the most damaging thing to a democratic republic, is the inability to hear people who you're programmed to disregard.
Now, given this ingrained bias, how are conservatives still winning elections?
The American voter is beginning to develop a sense of sophistication that they are no longer so easily manipulable by media narrative that they used to be.
So it just may be that the American people are too smart to fall for the myths perpetuated by the liberal media.
Facts are stubborn things, to use that old cliche, and the facts will out eventually. We still win anyway, conservatives do, because we've got facts and truth on our side more often than not.